We'll start again. My name is Chris Ryan, the CEO of CFA Society Switzerland. I'm very happy to have you all here in this standing room only place now. CFA Society Switzerland is the alumni organization of about 3,200 CFA charter holders in Switzerland. The Chartered Financial Analyst is what the CFA designation stands for. This is basically the global standard in finance education, which is hosted and conducted by CFA Institute, with about 250,000 people sitting the exam every year all around the world. We have roughly 1,700 candidates here in Switzerland sitting this exam. So CFA Institute is taking care of the CFA exam. CFA societies, of which there are 157, are taking care of local education and local networking, especially after you have joined the CFA charter holder community. There's quite a few of you here in the audience as well. If you want to learn more about the CFA designation and the CFA Society Switzerland, then please make sure to visit our booth, which is in B19, so just downstairs. I'm sure you'll find it if you haven't already passed it. You can also get one of these cups there, of course. All right. But this is not what you're here for, because what you're here for actually is to learn about China versus US tech. I'll very briefly give you some background before I let our two combatants cross their sabers, metaphorically speaking, on whether to invest in Chinese or US tech firms. As you know, the whole scenario of globalization looks like it's coming to a degree of an end. So there are strong political forces which are leading to increasing fragmentation and rivalry between geopolitical blocs. And technology, with all its ramifications and parts of it, has been identified as one of the key strategic factors in that rivalry between those geopolitical blocs. That in turn will or is already leading to a disintegration, to a disentanglement of a supply chain in technology, which traditionally has been very, very globalized. So I think there are some numbers around that an iPhone, before it lands in your pocket, has crossed borders about 50 times with all the different components traveling one way or another. So this is that disentanglement of the global value chain is certainly one of the major factors that are playing into this rivalry. But combine that with looking at, for instance, the Chinese A shares, the onshore market in China for Chinese technology firms, where allegedly valuation is irrelevant. So nobody really looks at valuations in the Chinese market, because that's not what the investment community there works after. So what's an investor to do? And in order to find out, or to give you some perspective, we're bringing together two practitioners who will represent either of these two sides. We will be starting with Julian Legenhoek, a technology analyst at UBP. And then he will be taking the side of the US investor, or the investment in US technology firms. And his counterparty is Chen Shikotesi, CFA. She is a board member of the CFA Society Switzerland and the fund manager for her China fund at GAM. So we have two very experienced analysts of the respective markets talking to us about this. And if we can have the presentation number 1, please. I'm sorry. Oh. That should be coming up. Yeah, very good. So the way we're going to play this is that we will have 10 minutes each to present their respective cases. I'll make sure that we're really sticking to the time. Then each has a response time of 5 minutes to counter the arguments, and then we'll open to the group. But before we start, I would just like to get a sense for the room. Who currently has a preference for US tech, who has a preference for China tech, and who doesn't know? Hands up please for US tech. Alright, hands up please for China tech. That looks about even, and hands up who doesn't know. Alright, we'll do the same thing at the end again to see what happens. Julia, do you want to start? Time is running.
Sure. Thank you, Chris, and I would like to thank you, Matthias, also for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I'm very excited to present you why I believe US tech is positioned to continue to lead the world. I'd like to start with a brief history about what is Silicon Valley and why it's positioned to continue to dominate. We've seen 4 different waves of innovation since the 1970s. It has started with the semiconductors, and it was the first wave. Companies with Fairchild, now you have still some giants, Intel, Qualcomm, Applied Materials, and this has created an environment where the founders of the companies left, created other companies, and so on. And during the first 20 years, we had here a lot of giants coming. In the 80s and 90s, on top of those companies, you had Apple, Microsoft, HP, and they continue to rule the world. And it's the same story. You have some guys created a company, and then they copy the other, and then you have an environment where everyone speaks to everyone. It's really dominant in California, the US tech. In the 90s to 2000, it was the internet, same thing. You have some guys speaking to the other, they are all in the San Francisco Bay, and they all copy the other, they all know each other, and all the innovation is concentrated here. And it's also the same now in the software industry. Not everyone is aware of that, but we see a major wave of innovation in the software industry. I'll detail that. Right now we have the 3 giants, the 3 dominant companies which will continue to rule the world in the same way the internet is ruling the consumer space. You have all the enterprise data concentrated through 3 giants, Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Workday, all in California, not Workday. And now you have a lot of new companies coming. This is a list of some software companies which are the leaders of tomorrow in the US. The average top-line growth of this group is more than 25%. You have some companies growing more than 100%. They are all number 1 of a nascent business in a major total addressable market with huge market share. And there's no Chinese company here. So I take just Zoom Video Communication. They are growing more than 100%. It's really the new type of Skype, if you want, for video conferencing. I could detail all of them. It will take a bit of time. They are mostly based in California. They are all quite recently listed, maybe except Splunk. And we see 10 to 15 companies each year going there. And they are all extremely innovative. And they have an edge. They are global companies. So, if we step back and go to some numbers, US versus China, you have 4 big groups of innovation. The software, I start with this one because it's the fastest growing space in the industry. If I take the Bloomberg and I just extract the number of listed companies, US versus China, you have 730 in US, 200 China. But actually, if you look at the SaaS group, software as a service, which should be called software through the internet, which would be more understandable in my view, you see that it's massively US dominated. And I believe it will be difficult to catch up. From the internet, you can see it's more mixed. You have 320 companies in the US, 130 in China. But most of the Chinese companies are located only in China or Asia at the moment. But I believe the top ones, because it's a winner-take-it-all business, I believe the US leaders will be difficult also to beat. At least if we don't see a breakup or this type of thing, which I believe is unlikely to happen. So again, US is clearly ahead, but China has some argument with Baidu, and the Tencent. In the semiconductor, it's a bit the same. Actually, the numbers are not correct. It's 120 for US and 130 for China, so the numbers of companies are the same. But in terms of market size, market capitalization weighted, the US is clearly leading. Just to remember during the trade war, if it was so difficult for Huawei to continue to operate business, because they entirely rely on US components. So I believe here again, the semiconductor, the US industry is clearly ahead of China. The only space where actually China is ahead is hardware. You can see it's tons of companies, 1,000 versus 1,200 on the other side. But this industry has one problem: the margins are zero. So, for instance, the smartphone Chinese makers, they probably have something like 40% market share globally, but 0% profit. Zero profit. Zero. So I believe overall, US is clearly ahead in terms of quality of innovation, even if China is trying to catch up. I would like to show maybe a glimpse about the future. This is the venture capital. Tech is 80% of venture capital, so we could say somehow technology is 80% of innovation globally. So you can see the consumer internet is a major, some software are hit here and there. So it's good to have that in mind. And if we split those versus US and China, we can see that US is close to half of the unicorn. So the unicorn are the privately owned company valued at more than 1 billion. It's from the Wall Street Journal Billion Dollar Club. If we split it by country, US is half, China is 26%. We can see that Europe is nowhere. So we can clearly say that US and China represent most of the innovation today. This is clear, but it shows also that US is still double what China is, even for the new companies. And also, the Chinese companies, they are not necessarily global, they are mostly based in China. So, I think I took 9 minutes.
You still have 2 minutes 50.
Okay, 2 minutes 50. So it's a very brief description. I could go in more detail, but I believe what is important is really this slide. It's how the US has an environment and how they are all related to each other. One interesting example is Workday, the #1 software in the human resources. In the past, SAP was the leader, and the PeopleSoft was the leader. It was acquired by SAP, if I'm correct, or Oracle, I forgot. And the founders of PeopleSoft left. And what they've done, they recreated a competitor, which is Workday. This is how it works. It really relies on human, on a few people who are very innovative. This is really how tech works. And for whatever is the reason, they are all in California. And this is why this huge thing, the Silicon Valley, which is where all the innovation of the last 50 years came from, this is the edge, the huge edge of US versus China. And you can see it took half a century to get there. Very good.
So you've made your case, and a very strong case indeed it is. Thank you very much, Julian. Now we're actually starting again with Jan.
Thanks,
With the second
I
presentation.
actually was on this side. I'm just used to it. So, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about Chinese technology. So I'm a fund manager at GAM, and I started investing in Chinese stocks in 1997. And I have been managing Chinese equity funds for 10 years. And during these these periods, I have really seen tremendous changes in China in terms of technology. So just 10 years ago, in the MSCI China Index, about single digit, let's say 7 or 8% are technology companies. Today, almost half of the index are technology related. So that shows how much technology has been developed in China. So the technology development is kind of in parallel with the economic development. So here I'm taking the data from Japan Center of Economic Research, so a bit more neutral view. So China currently the GDP is about 70% of the US size. And in the next 10 years, it's expected to catch up to the US. So the light blue line is the Chinese GDP. The dark blue is the US GDP. So that's why we're starting to see this rivalry between China and the US. And technology is the main battlefield in this rivalry. So here I'm listing some of the data on US versus China technology. And as Julian said, correctly put, that in software, for example, and semiconductors, US is clearly in the lead. As Chinese tech really has pretty much a 20-year of development history. But we can see that in some areas, for example, in the internet space, of course, China has a bigger population, so more internet users, more mobile payments. Areas like artificial intelligence, US is clearly in the lead. So here we are listing the largest technology companies in the world. The blue ones are the US companies and the red ones are Chinese companies. So we clearly see a dominance of the US, China in this technology field. And we see that also the largest 4 or 5 clearly in the lead are US global technology. Also, as Julian put, they are truly global companies, whereas most of the Chinese technology companies are still so far mainly doing business in China. So that's reflected in the size of the companies. But I would say that starting from the number 7, number 8, you can actually see that there is a quite even balance in terms of Chinese firms versus US firms. And here I'm showing the market share in smartphone. So one thing I want to point out is that if you look at Apple, 3-4 years ago it was 20% market share. It went down to 10. And in the meantime, Huawei went from roughly 10% market share to 20. And now among the top 5 smartphone producers, 3 of them are Chinese companies. And Huawei is also quite advanced in technology equipment. So it's clearly, that's the reason why the US policy is targeting specifically at Huawei. And here I also got some unicorn data. It's from a company called Hurun Research, and I think we have slightly different numbers. The difficulty is that since we are talking about private companies and their valuation is really very subjective, so I would say probably the true picture is somewhere between what Julian showed and what I showed, depending on which source you're taking. So here, if you look at the number of unicorns by country, and then the cities in terms of unicorn. So we have Beijing, Shanghai, Silicon Valley, and also a couple of other Chinese cities are very vibrant in terms of startups. And this is also a reason why I have confidence in China, because when investors look at China, they tend to say, it's a government that controls everything. You don't have much freedom. But if you think that in a country with such political system, that actually so many companies can start from zero and grow to a unicorn status, it actually tells you this economic system has something actually working quite well. And here are some of the large unicorns by company. So Ant Financial is a fintech company. ByteDance is in social network. They have a very popular app, TikTok. Didi Chuxing is a Chinese version of Uber. And then we have some American companies. And intellectual property has been something that has been holding back China in terms of technology investment or innovation, because historically in China, if you invent something, everyone copies you. So it erodes your advantage. So China has already realized that. And right now, China is a very busy patent country. So China is also moving forward in intellectual property protection, which is critical for the development of technology. In one area, I think China is standing out is digital economy. So because China started out as a latecomer, so a lot of the offline businesses were not well developed. So they went directly online. For example, in terms of payment, people basically went from cash to mobile payment and skipping completely the credit card. And therefore, if today you go to China, you pretty much pay everything with your phone. We can see in terms of digital economy in 2018, China, which is the gray column, has surpassed the US and become the biggest digital economy. And that gap is expected to continue to widen. And for a digital economy to develop, there are many important factors, including infrastructure. So here, you need a very good mobile infrastructure. You need to have cheap smartphones, which thanks to Huawei, Xiaomi, Oppo, you can buy a smartphone for $100 in China. So people can be online very easily. And then also you have a very good offline infrastructure, which makes delivery, for example, very efficient and cheap. For example, in Beijing, the same day delivery costs about 1.5 Swiss francs, which makes really facilitate the online economy. And then in terms of participants, we have the two pretty much the richest Chinese, both came out of the internet company. So because of that success, it has attracted a lot of young and smart and ambitious people to go into technology innovation. And in terms of venture capital, Silicon Valley ranks #1 in the world, and Shanghai and Beijing rank #2. So you also have ample capital going into technology innovation. Actually, a lot of them are US venture capital. And then finally, there's a very big domestic market, homogeneous populations. So you deal with the same regulations, same language, same rules, instead of dealing with, for example, in Europe, different languages, different rules, that also facilitate Chinese company to grow very fast. And for example, we can say that online shopping is already quite penetrated, but still in China, you have a company called Pinduoduo that started 4 or 5 years ago, and they have taken 20% market share. When you have a good business model, and you can still attack the big players like Alibaba.
1 minute, Jen.
Okay, this is my last slide. So, and the problem for Chinese technology companies is that they are relatively young, and because of the culture barrier, the language barrier, the Chinese companies so far have been mainly operating in China. Because if you want to develop a website or want to sell software, you have to have salespeople overseas in every country. You have to understand how each country works, and all of these are difficult to manage. But now with mobile apps, it's opening an area for Chinese companies to go global. So here we show the biggest, the most downloaded social network apps, and the highlighted ones are all backed by Chinese companies. So the most downloaded apps right now are TikTok, which is used by a lot of young people. And young people don't really know it's a Chinese company app. And it's so easy to download an app. And after you have the users, you can so easily start to monetize. So I think with the proliferation of the apps, it allows Chinese companies probably to have more potential to go out of China.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Julia, you've had a really passionate case for China. What's your response to that?
Thank you. So, thank you for this presentation. I think it was very interesting to see the different views. Obviously, I would question the numbers about venture capital unicorns. That would be my first curiosity, because I took two different sources. So I tried to, and they were not very different from one to the other. So I will look at this one ranking, which looked to have much more unicorns. That's something which is in my point of view surprising. The second point would be about the geographical exposure. I think there's a lot of very interesting companies there, for sure. Very compelling investment opportunities, but they remain mostly in China, with the exception of TikTok, which is very new and very niche, but indeed very interesting. So I would question the possibility of the Chinese model to become global, the Chinese tech model to become global. And it's true that because China is much more digital than US, it's the growth has been faster. But that also leaves more opportunity of growth in the US, because they are actually more dominant and lagging. So I think that makes the US opportunity even bigger for the future.
An interesting proposal, because China is actually growing faster. There's more opportunity for the US market. How do you counter that, Jan? We've got another.
I would say first in terms of the global expansion, I think it's correct that Chinese companies so far find it very difficult to go outside. So if you look at successful Chinese internet companies, they all started out copying the US. So Baidu basically copied Google, and every US website you have a copying version in China. So this since 1999 that has been the case. But in the last 5 years, we're starting to see some Chinese companies actually have innovative business models. For example, TikTok, it is a company with not just a few years of history. And they first what they do is a 15-second video. So you turn on the app, it's a video starts to play, which is generated by user. You don't like it, you swipe it. The next one starts to play, and then you swipe. And if you like, you watch. Then using artificial intelligence, they analyze your preference. Then they keep feeding you the video you like. Then very easily you can get addictive. And it also prevents the second mover, because the second mover always takes time to learn what you like. Whereas the first mover, you turn it on, it already keeps telling you, keep showing you what you're interested in. And I think this is also, if we look at social network, at first it's Facebook, it's text-based. Then people move to Instagram, which is picture-based. And now the Chinese company is coming with a new model, which is a video-based. So for young people, they have very short attention span. So they want, fast, something interesting. So I think this is basically a little angle where the Chinese companies are starting to come with their own business model and to try to disrupt the existing market. Whether it can be successful or not, we will see. But I think as the internet business becomes more competitive in China, the new business model, the innovation really becomes so critical for a newcomer to succeed. That is pushing Chinese companies going from copying to actually innovating. And that's where the growth is, and that's where the investor return comes from.
Very good. So you're close.
Okay.
Very good. Excellent. Well, let's give them a hand. The case basically for the US being it's the behemoth in the room, the elephant in the room, the inventor of technology, the base where all the capital is, where the cluster of innovation is in Silicon Valley, the whole network is there and it keeps being there. Whereas which Chen counters with the much faster growth in a much faster market is actually happening in China, and that's why you should actually go for Chinese tech. Now we're opening the room to questions. I'm sure you've been participating very actively, and I'm sure you have tons of questions.
Question to you, John. What is the key risk apart from the trade war with the US that the Chinese technology going is doing on prevail?
Yeah, actually, I think if you look from a government policy standpoint, technology development is almost a given because China has to move from low-end manufacturing to more consumption and innovation. So from that standpoint, I don't see much risk. Maybe the risk really coming from the technology field in China moves so fast that it's difficult to find the right companies to invest in. For example, if you look at Facebook, 2003, it was Facebook in social network. But in China, basically, billions of people moved from something called Renren to another app and then to WeChat. So you can have a dominant player and then in 3 years become quite irrelevant. So I think that is a challenge for investors. But if you can pick the company that actually is disrupting and that is actually growing fast, then you can have very high investment return. But the risk of picking the wrong one is high.
Next question. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, great presentation. Thank you, both of you. And I love the premise, so great. Maybe to go a little bit more less adversarial. How much acquisitions do you think may happen between the U.S. and the Chinese firms? And as opposed to being against each other, where do you start seeing some overlap in acquisitions? Any predictions?
So I believe all the big groups, especially the big internet ones, even more specifically in China, they do tons of acquisitions. I would have to check the numbers, but I believe Alphabet, Google makes on average for the last few years 100 acquisitions per year, whereas I've seen an article from the Financial Times 6 months ago, which was saying that Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, they do on average several hundred acquisitions per year. So clearly, in my opinion, we assist in China at a conglomeratization of tech, where everything, and if you look at the IPOs, they are all backed by Alibaba, Tencent, or whatever, or one of the big, whereas in the US, it's much less concentrated.
But Steve, are you asking about cross?
Well, yeah, that also.
Acquisition
Yeah, that's right. Cross-border.
Is it happening?
Actually, maybe I can jump in. For the last few years, Chinese companies have been trying to buy U.S. semiconductor companies because that's where China is weak, and they want to buy U.S. companies to get a hand on the most advanced technology, and it's been blocked by U.S. government. So I think what China wants to buy is they're difficult to revolt. So where some of the acquisition is happening is on the smaller scale. For example, TikTok was originally a small app in the US and it was bought by the Chinese company. Then they started marketing it successfully. So I think there will be still mergers and acquisitions, but the political oversight is strong.
But now TikTok is thinking about going to Singapore, right?
Right, yeah, they're actually already in many different
relocate.
Yeah, relocate to Singapore or potentially sell. That there's some rumors. Yeah.
Yes.
Talking of semiconductors, Taiwan is also very important. So how do you see from China to Taiwan their advantages in terms of technology?
Yeah. So I think if you look at a lot of Taiwanese companies, a large part of the operations are actually in China. So when the US put tariff on Chinese goods, actually a lot of Taiwanese companies got hurt because for the Taiwanese technology companies, the market is mainly in China. So I think the China and Taiwan are so reliant on each other. This should continue going forward.
Is that such valuing tech stocks for many years? Are they still interesting? One or the other, but is that sector?
Is value still there? Is there still value?
There are two big areas of growth in tech, internet and software. And one number is software, if you think it's the end despite the high valuation. The cloud transition has just started. The penetration of cloud within the total addressable market is less than 10%. So So Salesforce, which was one of the most mature companies, said that their total addressable market is less than 5% penetrated. So that gives us another times 10 in terms of, I think, stock price appreciation.
Swiss banks have only started to begin to discover the cloud.
And in terms of Chinese technology stocks, it's quite complicated because Chinese companies are listed in domestic China, and that's where the A-share market that Chris mentioned, and the tech companies tend to trade at very expensive valuations. But for most of the investors here, it's difficult to buy them. So what people here can buy are basically Chinese companies listed in Hong Kong or in the US. And if you look at Chinese companies listed in the US, since the trade war started in, let's say, January 2018, from the peak to the trough, the whole universe pretty much went down 40% because of the trade war concern, analysts cutting expectations. So after the 40% down, last year they recovered. But still, if you look at some of the companies, they still trade either at historical average valuations or below. One example I have is the second largest Chinese e-commerce company. At the beginning of last year, it was trading at 0.5 times price to sales. So most e-commerce companies trade at 3 to 4 times price to sales. So this is clearly quite cheap. And then after the recovery, now the company is still trading below 1 time price to sales. So I think if you do stock picking, you still find some Chinese tech that are actually quite attractively valued.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
This cybersecurity, maybe a US topic in terms of technology, or is China playing a role there?
I think in China, the cybersecurity, one part is protecting consumer data security. That's definitely big in China. But beyond that, the Chinese companies, the Chinese government and companies are also afraid of the US. So they're trying, for example, the Chinese government are trying to de-Americanize in their IT system by not buying anymore from Hewlett Packard, etc., to go domestic. I think that's also a bit of the concern for cyber security. And of course, the US is very not afraid and don't want Chinese to get the data there too.
Yeah, I would say that if you look at what is available on the market right now, cybersecurity is clearly US dominant with companies like Okta, CyberArk, Teammaker, Qualys. Those companies are most of all of them based in US. We have TeamViewer recently listed in Germany, but it's more an exception so far.
Maybe I can just quickly add, I think cybersecurity is important, but it actually can be an advantage for China because it's a less concern. So consumers are less concerned about their data privacy. So when it comes to, for example, autonomous driving, it's much easier to get approval and tested in China, I think, compared to other countries because of all these concerns. Or even like TikTok, there are a lot of discussions saying, a Chinese company is getting your data. So there are discussions starting now.
All right, Matthias, really last question.
What's the role of the government regulation? In the West, I know there's a big discussion about breaking up some of the big tech companies, so dominant, creating monopoly, which is maybe against more innovation. In China, it seems to be the opposite. The support, like the digital
And do you really want that for the last question?
Well, it's a difficult question. If you look at what happened with Microsoft, it has been under scrutiny from the Department of Justice during 7 years in the 90s, and the stock was up 600%. So I think it's not, in the end, nothing will happen. That's my view. But clearly, it's an advantage for China to have some support.
Right, yeah. And I think in China, the government is still quite supportive because the technology industry is creating so many jobs. And the number one goal for the Chinese government is full employment. And that's the basis for social security. And also, where China is weak, for example, semiconductor, the Chinese government has set up 2 big national funds to put billions of dollars into research, development of semiconductor industries. You know, from backing universities and to have the university research being put into industries. So this is also one of the complaints from the U.S. is that the Chinese government subsidizing the tech industry.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Now it's back to you. Hands up, please, for those who don't know yet or are still undecided whether their preference, whether their money goes into Chinese or US tech. Undecided. Quite a number of people is now we're going to see who would put their money into Chinese tech. That's a very good number. How about the US number? Yeah. Well, I think we're still about even, so I think the undecided people have roughly split into both camps. So let's give them both a big hand again for making. Those of you who are members, please make sure, if you haven't done so already, talk to my colleague Michelle here at the back door with the what's the hair you call it? To get your CE credits, and looking forward to seeing you at the CFA booth. Thank you very much.